Hi folks, Lou here with my rather odd background to talk about and what I'd say was an interesting phenomenon. I occasionally, for the past 10 years, have attended a university tabletop game club, North Carolina State University. And for the past several years, we tend to have a very large room full of people playing games, like 52. I think the greatest attendance was 85 or 84. So there are lots of tables. And occasionally I walk around and count how many tables are playing RPGs, how many tables are playing card games, or primarily card games, and how many tables are actually playing board games where the board is important or primary. I did this a couple of weeks ago and found that there were 3 RPGs going. I don't know how people manage when it's so loud, but they do. There were 5 card games, and there was 1 board game, which was at my table because I had mostly brought board games. I have lots of card games as well, but card games don't seem to interest publishers these days. A few years ago, they were quite popular, but now, not so much. Now, had done the same thing specifically to count several years ago, and every table at the meeting was playing a card game except, again, the people playing at my table. So the paradox here is that at least with college age people, and keep in mind college age people are very much avatar gamers. That is, they like games that have an avatar, whether it's a role-playing game or something else. Those people seem to play role-playing games and card games much, much more than they play board games. And yet there's another meeting I attend occasionally in Gainesville, Florida, where the players tend to be much older, like the youngest is 25, 26, something like that. And many of them are middle-aged. They're not old folks like me, baby boomers, so they're not playing war games, they're playing Euro games. And the Euro games, of course, often, but not always, are games that use a board, although sometimes they're just games that use cards. Now, keep in mind, people that age are not what I would call avatar gamers, where they like to have a piece that represents them and that everything emanates for the way it works in a role-playing game. So I suspect it's easier to have an avatar in a card game, or at least in the card games don't distract players from the fact that they don't have an avatar. Certainly you can have an avatar in a board game. For example, I have a game called Star Princes prototype where each player is a prince and they're all competing to become the king. After the king dies mysteriously, everybody blames everybody else. That's very much an avatar game because if the prince dies, you lose. Now, also the prince has a stronghold, and if you lose the stronghold, you lose. It's not quite an avatar, but close enough. And that's a board game, very much a board game, but that's unusual. And college age people certainly took to that game very well. So what point is this in the end? Well, I think that it is a limited sample space, and maybe I just have a limited sample space, and it's more common for people to play board games than I think. Certainly RPGs are popular, but when you look at the sales figures, RPGs are way down in the bottom, and board games and even card games, separate from Magic the Gathering and so on, are the ones that sell a lot more in terms of dollar sales. But I suspect, and there's really no way to tell, that college age people and high school age people play RPGs more than they play other kinds of games. It's just that playing RPGs at a big meeting that's quite loud is not as practical as playing them some other place where you just have the people playing the RPG and no one else. So take that for what it's worth. Thanks for listening.